Question from KT on Instagram. Who do you think will be the breakout star of 2025, Andy?
Oh, we're trying to turn this into the Ligue show, aren't we?
We are.
Malik Fofana of Lyon. It has to be. Still a teenager, but played pretty well after arriving last season, and has just built on that this season. He's not only one of the fastest players you'll see. He's good at beating a man. He's more and more composed when it comes to finishing as well. Plenty of assists. I think if you were to compare him to a player in a similar position, because he plays on the left wing, who sort of started to, who's Belgian, but started to really gild his career in France. You look at Jeremy Doku. He is a better player now than Doku was when he left Rennes. And I have no hesitation saying that. With Doku, you saw good moments. I couldn't have imagined him adapting to the Premier League as quickly as he has. And Guardiola's done a phenomenal job with Doku, by the way. But Fofana is capable of being a better player than him. And he's already done more in Ligue 1 than Doku ever did there. And I think if you look at this season, the competition for those attacking places for Lyon, essentially he's competing with Wilfried Zaha, who's one of the better players in the Premier League for 10 years, really. And Zaha can't get anywhere near the first team because he's simply not better than Fofana, a guy who's like more than 10 years younger than him. And it's not just about the physical attributes, because obviously Zaha didn't have a proper pre-season. He didn't have a proper pre-season before last season either, which has partly contributed to the situation that he finds himself in. But when Zaha comes into Lyon, you think, oh, right, he can really rebuild something. No, because between Cherki and Fofana, he's not got a sniff of the first team. This guy's going all the way.
Could you argue that Fofana's already broken out?
Yeah, you could, but if we're talking about breaking out in terms of continent-wide consciousness, I think people will realise what a talent he is. People on a wider basis will realise what a talent he is. He's already shown that he's a good player, but he is going to be one of the players who will be he'll be one of the best attacking players in European football. And I think Lyon can't hold him beyond the end of this season.
David?
Well, we really are turning this into the League On show, and I think you know where I'm going to stray far from where Andy's at. I'm staying at Monaco, and it honestly could be either Ben Seguir or Akliuche. And there is also an argument that they have potentially already broken out. Both fantastic, entertaining players, Akliuche, midfielder, attacking midfielder, and we've got Ben Seguir, like mainly left wing. But again, just really versatile in terms of the way that they move across the final third. Incredible technical ability, incredible confidence in both players as well, and they can get people on their feet. So there could be an argument that they've already broken out considering how impressive they've been this season. So I'm going to pick somebody else a bit niche who perhaps isn't fully around, and I'm going to go for Joël Ordóñez at Club Brugge. Big centre-back, Ecuadorian, part of this really good young core of Ecuadorian players who are coming through right now. They're sitting, I think it's third in World Cup qualification at the moment. There's only Argentina and Uruguay ahead of them. Premier League clubs, I think, are already tracking him. Incredibly technically adept centre-back. He can play it, but he's also extremely physical as well. He's going to be a name to watch, I think, over the next 8-9 months or so. I'll be really surprised if he's still in Belgium next summer.
I would have been so disappointed if you hadn't have gone for South American there.
Yeah, I do. I had to. Yeah. I was going to say.
This question's especially for you, David, but feel free to join in, Andy. Peter on email asks, will 2025 be a year in which La Liga make any progress in reclaiming its spot as Europe's top league?
I think it could well be. I think they've got a decent shot. A lot's going to depend what happens at Manchester City, in terms of them regaining form, in terms of Pep Guardiola, his future, in terms of how he reinvents them. We know he's staying on. So what he can do in the next chapter for City.
In terms of the charges?
In terms of that, yeah. In terms of that, and in terms of style as well, I think they potentially have hit a wall there. I think there's a few things that they need to extend there in terms of the style of play that they have. And it's going to be interesting to see how he develops that. football is very cyclical, and I think Guardiola influenced football at one level, then he hit a wall, and then he had to reinvent himself as well to understand the more physical side of the game and bring that into play. So that's going to be interesting. But yes, it is there, I think, potentially for La Liga to reclaim it. Barcelona, just so many issues off the field, but on the field, the talent, what they've got, the young talent that they've got, that young core of players is absolutely phenomenal. They've probably got one of the next, future Ballon d'Or winner in Lamine Yamal. So they're well positioned in terms of the team, what they have, the young players they have. Real Madrid, we all know who they have and the strength that they can have. It's a question of whether Ancelotti can get out of his own rut as well and really make this team click and find a style of play and find a place where Mbappe is extremely happy and extremely comfortable in that team. And looking at Atleti, you're in a very good place as well. We're not going to forget about them and as well. And I always say, nobody ever wants to play Atleti in the Champions League. That's a grueling one.
It's interesting that David is talking football-wise in terms of regaining the top spot, but money comes into it, doesn't it? A lot.
It does, and that's why I think the Manchester City thing is so incredibly important. So depending on whether they're found guilty and depending on the amount of punishment they take, I mean, this has a massive effect on the Premier League and its international standing. I think so far, most fans and a lot of commentators have looked at it from a perspective of how this will affect Manchester City, just Manchester City as a club, and how it will affect the top of the Premier League in terms of sporting-wise, in terms of the title race, and in terms of our titles redistributed and all this sort of stuff. But I think the problem is, a problem that hasn't really been looked at that much, is whenever you're talking about accusations of dishonesty within the game and large-scale dishonesty, it does affect the reputation of the whole league. And if we're talking about whether La Liga can make progress in reclaiming their spot as Europe's top league, Peter's put it very well, because he doesn't say, can La Liga become Europe's top league this season? Because I don't, this calendar year, because I don't think it can. But make progress towards it, definitely. I agree with that. And I think the City thing is huge, because if City are punished on a large scale, and of course we don't know what's going to happen yet, the Premier League is such a massive global product that if you come away from whatever the result of that case is, thinking that the last decade has just been like not real, I think that really does affect things. If you look at how Calciopoli in 2006 affected Italy, you could argue that Italy is still recovering from Calciopoli in 2006, which is almost 2 decades ago, because it created a talent drain. It changed the way that people looked at Italian football. It definitely affected its international reputation as well. And we're talking about something with City that's maybe even on a bigger scale. In terms of on the pitch, I completely agree with David in that I think Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Atletico are all in their ways the best to watch that they have been in a very long time. Yeah. And I think that makes a huge difference. Like, El Clasico has not been a don't miss fixture for a while now. No. And that is because of the not just the quality, but the expression of those two teams. Now, if you can add an Atletico into the mix, who have ways of really dismantling teams, which I think they do now. They're already at a point where they can dismantle weaker teams. If they can be more incisive in the bigger games, and if they can build a Champions League challenge off what they've got, and they're better equipped for that. I'm not saying they're among the Champions League favourites, but they're definitely better equipped to do well in that competition than they have been for really any time since 2016. Then that makes a difference. The other thing we've got to throw in is, you're talking about Ancelotti. What if the second half of 2025 is not Ancelotti but Xabi Alonso?
Yeah, and that makes that again, it adds appeal, and I think so much energy and emotion was given in those old El Clasico games. I think that was, if you look at it, it was a real peak moment for football. Spain were winning, Barcelona and Madrid are at the top. Those games were absolutely unmissable no matter where you needed to watch that.
On the problem, on the other hand, the problem is it really does rest on those three. Because if you look at where the Liga is at the moment, Sevilla are not winning the Europa League or competing in Europe any time soon. Betis should be rising to fill the gap in Seville as a city, but they're not because they've got their financial issues. Valencia are just a state, and Spanish football as a whole would really benefit from a strong Valencia.
And we can't. La Liga's issue has always been over the years the league as a whole. The rest of the league, whether it be 17 or 18 teams, retaining talent. And that builds a strong league. If you've got talent from top to bottom, I don't think La Liga has got that. I think the Premier League, say, has got that. I think you can go to every single club in the Premier League and pick out somebody who's able to go up a level from 15 teams downwards from the main ones. La Liga is in a bit of a issue, has a bit of an issue right there right now, because a lot of these clubs, your Valencias, your Sevillas, and Villarreals used to rely on producing talent and then selling it off. So they'd produce that talent, they'd play well for maybe a year, 2 years, and then they'd be sold on. I don't think they're producing talent at the rate that they once were.
No.
I don't think the market is as buoyant as it once was as well, so the money isn't filtering into the league. I don't think those clubs have recruited as well. You've Valencia, Sevilla, Villarreal again, because those teams were always top 6, top 7. They were always around there. So I don't think La Liga is as strong in that sense. But I will say we've got an Athletic Bilbao right now that is as strong as I've ever seen it. And it's a behemoth of a club. It is such a big club. If they were to win in Europe this season, the Europa League, that would be huge. That would be significant for Spanish football if they were able to do it. It is very possible. Yeah. Very young, exciting team and quality as well. And again, they're going to have a situation as well with Nico Williams, whether he stays or go at the end of the season. That's going to be a big one. That's going to define a lot of their future as well.
Does the national team's success have anything to say in this matter?
Well, it shows that good young players are being produced. Yeah. It certainly shows that. And I think what's really interesting about the current side, and not that I think they're particularly in a position to dominate European football or anything like that. I think where they succeeded in the summer was not only expression of how well De La Fuente's done in bringing that talent through, but also the shortcomings of the other teams. But having said that, they're a successful team that's not lent that hard on Barcelona and Real Madrid.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's a good mix.
Apart from Lamine Yamal, you look at the other key players, you look at Nico Williams, you look at Thubermendi, you look at Lenormand, you look at Unai Simon.
Even Rodri's at Man City, like it didn't used to be like that, The player in his position was Xabi Alonso, who was at Real Madrid. There's a nice spread and so young as well. And again, I keep making this point, some of these players as well, Spain dominated as they did in the Euros. I don't think even one of their most talented young players in Gavi was, he wasn't there. He's somebody who can really contribute to more success down the years.
Yeah, this question, and so far we've talked in generic terms of what may or may not happen in 2025. This is very specific to a particular player. Question from Nick on X. Will Victor Osimhen still be at Galatasaray come the end of 2025, Andy?
Well, I still think no. Of course, he's got this loan contract till the end of the season, which it looks like he won't break in January. But I think the fact that Nick's asked the question even is really interesting. It's been clear that Osimhen has loved it at Galatasaray. Obviously, they're delighted to have him as well. And I think he's been taken aback by what a great experience it was. Because let's not muck about. He took this move because he'd been put in an untenable position at Napoli, really, from the way they'd mismanaged his situation. Now, given everything that Osimhen has done while he was there, and clearly they invested a lot in him financially as well, but they've not always treated him with as much sensitivity as they might have done in a number of ways. And this is a guy who helped shoot them to the only Scudetto they've won without Maradona. Let's not forget that. Whether he goes back and plays for Napoli again, which I think is incredibly unlikely, or if he never plays another minute for them, he is one of the most important players in their modern history, and he deserves all the praise. But I think that he took Galatasaray as kind of just the only option that was on the table, and they've done very well, and it shows how their ability to think around a financial problem. They showed it when they originally signed Icardi on loan, and then when they signed Icardi permanently, enabled them to get him. I think he's enjoyed it so much. The warmth of the fans, feeling important again, competing for the title and competing in Europe as well. All that has been great for him. And of course, he's not ruled out staying. They have definitely looked at other ways, like when they signed Icardi permanently, which people thought would be impossible. They've looked at ways that they could figure that. Clearly, they're going to have some sponsor step in to pay some of the fee. The way wages are incentivized and tax is low in Turkey, it'll still be difficult, obviously, but it might not be completely impossible. I think there's one real question, really. Well, two real questions. How does he play for the rest of the season in European competition? Because that's what will make other teams want to come and get him. And the second thing is, what does the market look like come the summer? Because the reason that there wasn't a market for him last summer is not because people didn't think he was any good or didn't want him. And as Nicky Bandini has said to us before, there's been a lot of nonsense written about Osimhen's last season at Napoli, which, considering they finished 10th, very respectable goal record, very respectable. And he was isolated for a lot of that as well. Didn't have the greatest support. Didn't have a fit Kvaratskhelia for some of the season. I think it's the difficulty of really another team being able to afford him. I think that there are teams out there who would definitely benefit from having him. Even now, if Chelsea went and got him next summer, I would think that was an absolutely great signing for them if they could make it work financially. I guess the thing is, there's a question whether the market's really out there, and with Osimhen, who is prepared to go the extra mile for him? Because it's clear, Galatasaray have made clear that they want to do that.
It'd be interesting to see where Chelsea are come next summer, because they're clearly, if you look at the title race in the Premier League, they're quite ahead of their development in many ways. They're probably in a position they're like, we're quite surprised we're this close, we're this amongst it. I wonder if it comes to the summer that they've only finished maybe 3 points, 6 points back, and they've had a really strong season. They maybe look at it and go, all right, we've got Nicholas Jackson, who I do really like. Actually, I like a lot about him. I wonder if they look at him. I wonder if they look at him and go, all right, okay, we maybe do need that upgrade. There maybe were those games where we narrowly lost or we drew, that Osimhen presence in the penalty area, because of how aggressive he is in the penalty area and the way he attacks the ball, especially the way he heads the ball. I always think, I wonder if they'll look at it and go, all right, we maybe missed a trick there. Maybe that was the missing thing that we had from us, finishing third or second and not winning the title.
Is the question a little bit disrespectful towards the Turkish league, suggesting that Osimhen is better than the Super League?
I know where you're coming from, but I think it's realistic.
Yeah.
I think there's a financial aspect to it. That they've even put themselves in the mix is an achievement. And the fact that he is having such a great time there and would at least respectfully consider an offer, I think shows how well they've done. But you have to be realistic about where the Super League is in the pecking order.
I think they probably know, and no, they've got the fans will deny this as well because they're so passionate about their clubs. But like you say, there will be that realism. It is, and accept that they are maybe that tier 3 league in Europe. Would you say? Yeah,
and I think you have to ask, what does it stop them doing in terms of really refurnishing that team? Because I guess it's like any sports team, when you've got a limited budget, if you invest either of all that money in the big two, say, I'm not sure if Icardi and Osimhen long term really works. I think it leaves the team quite vulnerable, particularly off the ball. Now, it looks prestigious and it looks great and it's super fun if you're a fan, to have Osimhen and Icardi up front. But Icardi is coming back from injury because he's got this long-term injury. It's a problem that's sort of been kicked down the road, really. But they took Osimhen as an opportunity signing, not a planned one, because the opportunity fell in their laps. Can you sustainably go forward with those two? Does it work tactically? Because you have to play them both in every game that they're fit, really. And how do you improve the rest of the team whilst you're carrying those two massive wages? I don't know if there's a way to do it.
This is a big question now. From Gareth on Instagram, might take some time to unravel, but the question is, what should UEFA President Alexander Schäferin have as his number one priority for 2025?
I think it's quite simple. UEFA need to put work into organising their showpiece events better. And UEFA has done some good things, I think, in organisational levels. Certainly in competition, you look at the Conference League has been a big success. I think the Nations League has been a success, even though because of COVID and because of the backlog of fixtures and players never getting any time off, it's had a sort of last in, first out sort of feeling that a lot of people think that is the problem in terms of scheduling. It's not, but that's a different discussion. But I think if you look at recent showpieces, and if you look at particularly in 2021, you look at the Euro final at Wembley, it sort of unfolded in a really dangerous, chaotic way in which more people could have been hurt. Then you look at...
And you put that down to UEFA?
Well, they're the event organiser. I mean, the fact is, you had the same thing with the Champions League final in Paris between Real Madrid and Liverpool, in which UEFA took a really long time to sort of say we had any involvement in this. First it was the fans, then it was the police. But actually, we're having a series of these poorly organised events under the same jurisdiction in different countries. Now, look, we all want to see the best football possible, the most competitive football possible on the pitch. The most important thing in any football event is that everyone has a good time and everyone gets home safely at the end of it. It's an unsustainable situation. Now that you have an authority that is both a competition organiser and a commercial exponent and a disciplinary body, has been argued and can be argued is contradictory. But for me, the main thing for UEFA is putting on these events that we love, like the Euros, like the Champions League. To have a situation where the people who bring those events alive by attending them are more than uncomfortable, are put in danger, at risk, that just can't carry on. And like, there is enough profit made from those showpieces that there's no excuse to not get to the root of it, to take responsibility for it and to sort it out. These major events need to be better. That's what needs to change. And that should be their number one priority, not the Super League, not anything else.
David?
Okay. No, I think Andy's made a compelling argument there. For me, I would say it's more directly to do with fans and fan culture. And I do think something needs to be installed or put in across the board about ticket prices for big tournaments, for these tournaments, whether it be on the national stage or whether it be international tournaments, or whether it be your Champions League, Europa League, or anything like that. I think we've seen a number of fan protests build up, and from some of the big clubs as well. I know Bayern Munich are very aware of this and such, and they constantly have protests and banners about this. So I think something needs to be put in across the board that certain teams and certain fans going to certain places aren't charged just ridiculous prices. I think there needs to be some sort of cap put in, some sort of law come in that these clubs can't charge this. I think one of the great things about these competitions is the fact that, you know, the kind of the mesh of teams that you have from different nations, and especially when we've seen in the Conference League, which has been a success. I think fans need to be able to travel to these places with no problems in terms of affordability, because there's so many other things that are going to cost them, your flights, your accommodation and such. So I think by going to the game, I think that needs to be a thing that you don't concern yourself with. And sadly, I just think fans are getting more and more forgotten in the game.